Who has had a good week, Katie?
Well, it's very obvious he's had a bad week politically here in France, but apparently I've been assigned a good week to hand out this week,
Yes.
confusingly. So I'm going to say it has been a good week for the enemies of Marine Le Pen, because she has had a frankly terrible week, maybe the worst she has ever had in political terms, because she has been banned from running to be French president in the next elections in 2027. Unless something really unlikely happens and she's able to get this overturned within the next 2 years, Marine Le Pen will not be the next French president. Maybe someone else from the far right will, but it certainly will not be this person who has come to embody the far right in France and is certainly its best known politician. Along with being banned from running for office, Le Pen also got handed 2 years of suspended jail time, meaning she won't actually have to serve them behind bars, but she did get another 2 years in which she'll have to wear an electronic bracelet. And she got a €100,000 fine. So awful week for Le Pen. Great week for people who dislike/hate Marine Le Pen and her rivals in the political mainstream, who've been increasingly worried that she could actually win the presidency. But yeah, if you look at the kind of memes that people have been posting this week in the wake of this really quite momentous ruling, a lot of the posts from the young people use this word "cher," which is young person slang. I think it comes from Arabic, actually. But it is a single word in modern French that means, well, you got what you deserved. Cher.
And so this ban from politics for Marine Le Pen, it's because she's been found guilty of embezzling money, right?
Yeah, absolutely huge court case. It's pretty rare in France to have a single court case bring down a politician. Like if you look at someone like Nicolas Sarkozy, for instance, I've kind of lost track of how many court cases he's been involved in. I think he's implicated in 5 currently.
He's also got an electronic tag bracelet
He
thing now, right? Doesn't he?
does, yes. Le Pen will be in good company. So this is that rare thing. It is a single blockbuster court ruling that has ended a politician's career, or at least put a huge obstacle in front of the thing that she really, really wants, which is, of course, to become president. What was this court case actually about? Well, it's actually kind of scandalous. Le Pen was found guilty of presiding over a huge system of embezzlement of money from the European Parliament that was supposed to be used to pay staff working for members of her far right party who were members of the European Parliament. Now, what was discovered is that actually for years and years, Le Pen's party, the Rassemblement National, they used that money to pay people working for the party in France, not working at the European Parliament in Brussels and Strasbourg. And in total, it has been found that they siphoned off 4.5 million euros of European taxpayer money to fund the party this way.
Ooh, okay. I can't quite believe I'm going to say this, but just to play devil's advocate here, like, is it
Go on.
really so different doing work for a far-right French MEP in Brussels versus doing work for the party somewhere else? Like, does it really matter?
It does really matter. And it matters because that money was 4.5 million euros of European taxpayer money that was earmarked for the running of this parliament that we all share as Europeans. So they have spent some of your money, Dominic, on building up this far right party.
I feel
in
very
France.
attacked now.
Not very much of your money, but a little bit of it. But they spent your money on building up this far right party in France and trying to help it win elections when this money was supposed to be spent on parliamentary assistants whose job is to, do research for members of parliament who, yes, might be far right, but they have been elected under our democratic system, so they should be able to hire the staff that they need in order to, whatever, research the horrible things they're going to say in their speeches, organize their paper clips, whatever. Your money as a Dutch taxpayer should be spent on them being there and taking part in that joint European democratic exercise. And the prosecutors demonstrated very clearly that Le Pen's party were systematically hiding the fact that the people it hired with the European Parliament money weren't actually working for the European Parliament at all. Like at one point in court, the prosecutors actually showed text messages from one parliamentary assistant asking to be introduced to the member of parliament he was supposedly working for
Ooh.
months after he started the job. Now, Le Pen is not the only person who's been found guilty of presiding over this embezzlement of European money. 24 other members of her party were also found guilty on Monday, including 9 former members of the European Parliament and 12 former parliamentary assistants.
Okay, I do think it's bad. I'm taking off my hat as devil's advocate, and
Well done.
I'm moving over to the other camp. But presumably, Le Pen is not accepting your arguments or the judge's arguments, and she is absolutely furious about this ruling. Surely she's going to appeal it.
Yeah, she is absolutely furious. And yes, she is going to appeal. I mean, look, she knew it was a possibility that she could get banned from politics if found guilty in this court case, which has been going on for a long time. She had talked about what it would mean if it happened, and she had described it as a political death sentence. But it does seem to have been a shock, even so. She walked out of court on Monday before the hearing was over, and it's not really clear why. Does it mean the end of her career? It's not quite that simple. So Le Pen is allowed to keep her current job as a member of the national parliament, but she can't run in any election at any point in the next 5 years. And that includes the presidential election in 2 years' time. Like I said, she has, of course, vowed to appeal this ruling, but it's really unclear that she can even get a hearing at the appeals court in time for the next presidential election. France's courts are incredibly backlogged, so they would have to fast track this case. And there's an argument over whether that should be done, given that her supporters on one side are saying that Le Pen being banned from running for president is a gross offence to democracy. And then on the other side, you've got some of her opponents conversely arguing that justice should apply equally to everyone. She has been found guilty and she shouldn't get special treatment. In terms of the reactions that we've been seeing, both Le Pen herself and her far-right allies at home and internationally, they've all been doing what has now become a bit of a trope in the modern far-right, which is to take a decision that has been made by an independent court and to say that it is political and it's a sham. Jordan Bardella, who is this young French far-right politician, very much Le Pen's appointed heir. He's actually the president of the party already, even though Le Pen is still better known. He has called for a peaceful uprising against the ruling, and he gave this rather dramatic reaction. He said, "It's not just Marine Le Pen who has been unjustly condemned. It is French democracy itself that has been executed." He seems to be rather glossing over the fact that his mentor was found guilty of presiding over massive fraudulent use of funding from Parliament. And I don't know, maybe this is just me, but someone being found guilty of misusing parliamentary money and then getting barred from politics because of that, that doesn't sound like the death of democracy to me. That sounds like our democratic system, which includes independent courts working exactly as it's supposed to. But we've seen this again and again in recent years, populist politicians all over the world boasting about what big fans of law and order they are. And then when a court shines a light on their bad behavior, they undermine people's trust in those courts and they try to make out like they're corrupt. Trump has done this, Musk has done this. There was that famous headline in the right-wing British newspaper, the Daily Mail, a few years ago, describing judges as enemies of the people over this ruling related to Brexit. That kind of language is really dangerous, but it's becoming more and more common among international populists. And I don't love it as a trend.
I find it really depressing, this victimization of populist leaders who have broken the law, trying to use it as a political moment to galvanize support and undermine institutions. It's scary. But I did want to ask, do you think if this hadn't happened, that Le Pen could have actually won the next election, the next presidential election?
That's a really interesting question. So Le Pen has run for the French presidency 3 times now since 2012. And every time she has improved her score, she has improved her performance. She's also quite skillfully made her party and its policies less socially taboo since she took over leadership from her dad, Jean-Marie Le Pen, in 2011. And that is not work that she has done alone. We have talked a lot on this podcast about how in France, as in other European countries, centre-right parties have really helped the far right to seem more acceptable by borrowing its policies on immigration and Islam because they're scared of the far right taking their votes. But I think Le Pen can be seen as a bit of a trailblazer in terms of making a lot of French people feel like there is nothing shameful in voting for her party and paving the way for people like Giorgia Meloni, who came after her. So she has been getting closer and closer. The Rassemblement National is now the biggest single party in the French National Assembly. It also did fantastically well in the European elections last year, beating the Liberals and the left by a long way. Still, to become French president, you have to get more than 50% of people to vote for you. And without wanting to be complacent, we still saw in the French national elections last year that people are willing to mobilize and block the far right when it feels like a genuine threat. So I don't want to say that she couldn't have won in 2027, but the bar for winning the French presidency is thankfully still pretty high.
So now that she almost certainly can't run, who is going to run for the far right? Is it this scary young guy, Jordan Bardella?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big dilemma facing Le Pen and her party right now. So Bardella is very much a rising star. If you don't know him, he's this slick-haired, some would say handsome, others would say slimy, 29-year-old. And he is the guy who led Le Pen's party to this stomping victory in the European elections last year. He is now a member of the European Parliament. And he's played a really big role in making the Rassemblement National popular among young French people. He is great at social media. He has like 2 million TikTok followers. He grew up on a public housing estate in Saint Denis, which is a pretty poor suburb of Paris. And he has used this modest personal background to great political effect in terms of painting himself as, man of the people or whatever. Some people have complained that he has exaggerated that background. Yes, he grew up on a public housing estate, but he also went to private school. He is quite an impressive young politician in some ways. And no one doubts that he is the obvious person to take over from Le Pen. At the same time, he's going to be 31 years old at the time of the next presidential election, and he is still very inexperienced. Like, it took Le Pen 3 attempts to get as close to the presidency as she has done, which is 41% of the vote the last time she tried. Could Bardella build on that, or would he actually undo her work to some extent? Like, when it comes down to it, Bardella is still not very good at debating. He did actually have to do some formal debating against his opponents during the European election campaign last year. And he was pretty awkward. Like, it seemed like he really wanted to just be able to stick to a script. And as a member of the European Parliament, he mostly doesn't even show up for debates. What he is really good at is social media. And that does matter more than it ever has mattered. Like in the last presidential election in 2022, a historically low number of French people actually watched the televised debate between Le Pen and Emmanuel Macron. More and more people are getting their news from social media where there is no nuance, and they are skipping the formal debates, which is where you can really see whether politicians know their policy and have a grasp on detail. And a politician like Jordan Bardella is only getting more powerful in that context. Having said that, like I said, the bar is really high for becoming president here in France. You need to persuade more than 50% of the voting public. And combined with Le Pen, I think Bardella and her make quite a powerful double act. Like, you've got her as this more mature politician and this kind of tough, motherly persona that
Cat lady as well.
Cat lady, kind of like,
proud cat lady, right?
Very proud cat lady.
I don't mean that as a diss.
Oh, and nor should you as a cat owner.
Exactly. I'm a cat lady.
So good for you. Something you share with Marine Le Pen. So yeah, you've got her as this kind of like motherly, tough political figure. Alongside him as this more youthful figure who, frankly, to a lot of young voters, he has made voting for the far right seem not only socially acceptable, but in some corners actively cool. But yeah, they've been kind of becoming more powerful as a kind of leadership duo. So if you take out Le Pen, I would probably join the very large number of commentators who very strongly doubt that Bardella could become modern France's first far-right president, aged 31. And this is something that's being said within the party as well, by the way. It's not just commentators who are saying that. Having said that, we are lining up for a hugely unpredictable election in 2 years' time. There is going to be no Emmanuel Macron. He's not allowed to run again. And now no Marine Le Pen. So it's all to play for.
I think it's interesting that you're framing this as a good week for Le Pen's opponents, because actually a lot of the commentary that I'd read or listened to before I spoke to you just now was quite defeatist, I felt, about mainstream politicians in France. That people saying, "Oh, this is the far right's chance to galvanize their support and create a narrative as if they've been wronged by this corrupt liberal system." But now I listen to you, I realize, this 50% bar for the presidential election is really something. And
I might look back at this podcast and think, Jesus, that was complacent. And Bardella has passed that bar very easily. We don't know, right? There's a lot of time to pass. And you're right. They can try and spin that narrative. So far, this case doesn't really seem to have had that much of an impact on their support numbers. But I guess we'll see in the next few weeks how things change. One final thing before I wrap up. It is worth taking this back, I think, to the original facts of this court case, which is that Marine Le Pen's party managed to scam European taxpayers out of 4.5 million euros. Now, they are not the only political party that has run this kind of scam. If you're British, you might remember Nigel Farage's party, UKIP, having to pay back tens of thousands of euros over very similar revelations that they had used European Parliament money to pay employees that had nothing to do with Parliament before Brexit. And there have been other cases like this too. And actually, the campaign group Transparency International, their reaction to Le Pen's conviction this week was to point out that it is still far too easy for members of the European Parliament to misuse money. There was an investigation by journalists from Follow the Money that showed that nearly a fifth of MEPs had misspent their allowances. So, this French case was a really high-profile case of systematic embezzlement. But dodgy use of our money is sadly something that happens all the time at the European Parliament. And clearly there is still plenty that could be done to make that kind of corruption less easy to get away with.
Yeah, be more careful with our money, politicians.
Yes, please.